Podcast Nation, welcome to the SOS Podcast. Thank you for tuning into the best coverage in Southern Ontario sports and beyond. Today is Monday, October 27th. We've got a nice early recording time here, so good morning, everybody. Give us a follow on Twitter at the SOS Podcast. Find me personally at Adam J. Thomas 1, and you can follow Steve at Steven Resnick. But before we do get into some sports action here, would first like to take a second to reflect on the shootings that took place here in Ottawa this past week. Of course, young Nathan Cirillo, his life was lost standing duty. Actually not too far away from my house, so it's close to home here as well, and across Canada, of course. So a moment of silence for Nathan Cirillo. We'd like to thank all those who serve in the armed forces across Canada. Thank you for putting your lives on the line for us. Okay, Steve, let's get into the show here, starting with the World Series and a big Game 5 last night. San Francisco winning that in dominant fashion, pretty well propelled by an untouchable Madison Bumgarner. I think he's just cemented, if there was any question, which I don't think there was, he's certainly gone ahead and just shut that out. Throws a complete game shutout, 4 hits. Royals had no answer for him. Your thoughts on Bumgarner and the Giants going forward?
Yeah, you got to figure if the Giants are able to take the series, which it appears they look primed to do, that Bumgarner's got that MVP locked up already with those 2 pretty phenomenal starts. You wonder if it does go to Game 7, would they even bring him out of the bullpen there if need be after throwing so many pitches? But who knows if they'll even need that. I think they've got the confidence now. They got the momentum, so to speak, off that last win in San Francisco last night. So I think they're going to take it in Game 6.
Yeah, Baumgartner's been dynamite. His numbers through the playoffs, they're insane. Over 12 career starts and relief appearances at 2.27 ERA. He's pitched a .56 ERA in this World Series alone. He's definitely got the MVP locked up. And I don't think you hesitate. If they do get to Game 7 and you do need somebody to step in there in the 4th, 5th inning if things are going terrible, why not look to him? He's had the right stuff every time he's ever been called upon before, and I think he'll probably will do it for them. And maybe your call on those Giants winning the series probably will come through, I would think. But if we look back to Game 1 again, it was more Bumgarner. Game 2 and 3 went over to KC with the Kansas City bullpen pitching some clean innings again, just showing up with no hits, no runs, nothing across the board. I don't know if it's going to be enough to get them through another 2 wins in this series. But do you think the KC bullpen will get a chance to shine again, at least in one of the 2 games, if not both?
Well, I definitely think you're not going to see Kansas City give up lightly. They're definitely going to put up a fight, and I'd be surprised to see any form of a blowout or even a marginal differential. I expect it'll be a close 1 or 2 run game in Game 6. I think if the Royals can get it, even if they're down 1, they might even start bringing their 7th, 8th, 9 guys in, and Herrera and Davis and Holland if they have to, just because it's all or nothing. I think you gotta bring him in regardless, knowing that if you lose, there's no game the next day.
Sure, yeah, no, that's a very valid point. There's no waiting at this point, right? I just want to touch on Game 4 quickly here. It's kind of the one odd duck in the mix here. It was a huge power showing by San Francisco, and actually, Kansas City's had a little bit of power themselves, but the 11-4 win. Vogelsong gets lit, so does Vargas. Both have a terrible game. Petit comes in for the Giants and pretty well makes the difference in what amounted to that game, settled things down a bit. But really, the difference in this game was the San Francisco batting lineup. Pence, Sandoval, just knocking the ball around, Posey playing real well. The Kansas City Royals are not getting through those 1, 2, 3, 4 hitters with any ease. Is that the difference in this series in the end, or do you still look back to a Bumgarner? Is it the hitting, the pitching? What's doing it for you right now?
I think you got to say it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I don't think you would say the Royals have had exponentially worse hitting or pitching in that 3-2 deficit they're facing right now. But like we said coming into the series, the Giants just seem to have that knack about them that they're going to get that hit when they need it. They're just a clutch team. They get those wins when they need them. And it just seems, again, with Sandoval and Pence, and especially with Pence at the plate and in the field as well, just making the big plays when they need to be made.
Absolutely. And San Francisco looking at 27 runs through 5 games. Kansas City a touch behind with 15 runs. So I think there is a little bit of a differential starting to show up there. Don't know if it will necessarily carry through the next two games or not. Ventura was good in his first appearance against the Giants, so maybe he can slow things down here in Game 6. And that'll bring us to a potential Game 7 where Hudson and Guthrie would take the mound. And there was not an overly strong performance by either one, both serviceable in their starts. So maybe a bit of a toss-up. But if we go to calling a decision here in the last two games of this series and who takes the championship, do you change? Do you waver, Steve? Or are you sticking with the Giants?
I'm still sticking with the Giants. I think they're going to be able to take Game 6. They don't even want to risk Game 7 in Kansas City, which I'm sure would have a pretty frenzied crowd. So I think Game 6 is going to be the final game of the Major League season this year.
So got to be Game 6 for the Giants. I won't back down from my call. I'll stay with the Royals, but my heart of hearts, I think when I made this original prediction, I mentioned I think the Giants can pull this out. It looks like they're going that way, so wouldn't be terribly surprised. But I will stay with the Royals, obviously having to do it in dramatic Game 7 fashion at home. But would make for a great story. So let's hope I'm correct on that.
Welcome to the National Hockey League.
Then you have the Toronto Maple Leafs.
The home ice advantage is actually a disadvantage.
Ottawa Senators.
If I was an Ottawa Senators fan.
Kessel had a couple goals.
A late goal by Ryan off a nice pass from Carlson.
Gotta love the Habs.
Suarez looking to be a dominant player again.
Jumping over to the NHL. A bit of a crazy week here for the Sens and Leafs. Of course, they were intimately affected by the shootings here in Ottawa with their game being postponed on the Wednesday. I think that was obviously the right call. The game taking place in Ottawa. The Leafs were on lockdown in downtown hotel not far from the site of the shootings. Steve, any thoughts there about the postponement?
Yeah, I don't think you'll find anyone who's going to argue that it was a bad call to postpone that game. Some people might have been surprised it wasn't made up the next day with both teams having an off day and the CTC being open in Ottawa. But I think, again, you got to agree with the league. Better safe than sorry. Be cautious about this. They found a date later on in November. It works for both teams. And I think this public safety was essential to be the first priority in the hockey game, definitely not a close second.
Yeah, and in those first 24, 48 hours, I think there was still a lot of shock, a lot of just trying to figure out what was going on, and not too surprised they pushed on to November. But that game is not far off. We're about to turn the calendar into the month of November, so we will see that game soon enough. That being said, before that game, though, the Leafs took on a pretty hot Islanders team and did find a way to get the win out in Long Island. Kessel had a couple goals. JVR putting up a goal and assist. Santorelli shows up on the score sheet. Bernier plays well. Things look good for the Leafs in Long Island. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, it definitely helped that it looked like Halak had a bit of an off night. They were able to really pick apart his low blocker. I think at least 4, if not all 5 of their goals on him were scored in the same spot. Bernier definitely looked very solid in net, coming off a strong performance in Detroit the previous weekend. The Leafs, while getting down early, they came back, and there was no third period collapse. They kept at it, kept a bit of a forecheck up, didn't play passive. I'm sure it helps with a bit of a bigger lead, but with the Leafs, you can never really be so certain.
That is the truth, because the very next game there against the Boston Bruins, it's almost a flip of the script. Kessel and Phaneuf go for a -2. Rask continues to dominate. Dougie Hamilton splits the D, looking like Bobby Orr out there. Bernier plays terrible. Which team do you get here with the Leafs night in, night out? Is it the game they played against the Islanders, the game they played against the Bruins, or somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, you got to start to wonder if the home ice advantage is actually a disadvantage for the Leafs, because all 3 of their pretty awful performances this year have been all on home ice, and the fans are just not very happy with it. Probably would have been a shutout on Saturday if not for the late power play goal by Panic, and just a pretty disappointing showing from the top line to the bottom line. Just no one really stepped up. Bernier mercy pulled, but he wasn't standing on his head or making that big save when he needed to bail the team out when they needed him either.
Yeah, and I wonder if this just starts to boil down to, is this simply a 500 hockey team? Is it the same team as last year? What about Carlisle at this point? I mean, they're not off to a great start. You know, his name has been one that's thrown around a little bit. He seems to have the endorsement of the front office. Does he start to show up on the hot seat here? Maybe another 10 games in if they haven't, pulled a bit of a turnaround. If they're still sitting around 500 or a little below.
They're still around 500. I'm not so sure, but if they keep losing the way they have been and just playing with pretty minimal effort and not to say they're not trying, but just playing like men against boys, as Carlisle said after the Bruins game. I think you will see a lot of chatter about that and him really getting on the hot seat. Again, with all of his assistants being fired before the season started, I think he's on a short leash to begin with, and with the team sort of looking like they did to end the year last year, I don't think it's looking too good in his future.
Been an interesting run for Carlisle here. There hasn't been a tremendous amount of success over his tenure, but he is the man now, so I think he's going to show up on the hot seat a little bit sooner than later, even at 500. If they make it to the 25-30 game mark and they're still around that number and they haven't showed a lot of inspirational play or much has changed, I would think his name will start to come up. And without his assistants there, I think management has more or less said, okay, your scapegoats are gone. This is going to be on you if the performance isn't there. And at this point, I don't think the performance is there. But jumping over to the Senators, whose performance has been a little bit shakier this week as well. They took a loss in OT on Saturday night to the Devils. Not a bad game overall. They were competitive. Tough loss to OT. I thought Leonard played well. It kind of let up a soft one to Jágr in the OT, but otherwise had a decent game. Mahalik, I will have to bite my tongue here and give him a nod. He's played a little bit better this past week. But Senators, Devils, tough loss there for the Sens. Any thoughts from you, Steve?
Yeah, I did. I think the way, especially, I don't think Jágr got all of his shot on that overtime goal, so I think Leonard might have wanted that one back. But the late goal by Ryan off a nice pass from Karlsson to tie it up in the third period, I think getting that 1 point is big for the Senators. Not that they've had a rough start in terms of getting points, but I think it showed that they've got some fight left in them. Definitely being shorthanded in overtime, 3-on-4, a lot harder than the 4-on-5 usual one, a lot more space out there. And as you saw, the Sens tried to jump in the rush, quickly counterattack, and before you know it, the game's over.
Anyhow, it's too bad they found the loss there, and I think you're right. Leonard probably wants that goal back, but that's not the way it works. To flip the coin over to their travel day over to Chicago, short night of rest. They come up short there 2-1. Craig Anderson has a phenomenal night, playing pretty well, lights out. Got burnt on a bad Tays goal at the start of the second. I don't know. Team sort of just fell asleep off the puck drop there, and he got himself a wraparound to find the 1-0 lead there for Chicago. The story for me, though, from the Ottawa perspective anyway, 9 minors throughout the game, completely unacceptable. It's a combination, I think, of being somewhat undisciplined, but also somewhat being underclass compared to the Chicago Blackhawks. I think the Blackhawks are, they're truly a class team in the league, and I don't think the Senators are there. And so you see a lot of the hooking and other calls ramping up on them. And, of course, Chicago capitalized with the game winner coming on the power play. Your thoughts on the effort in Chicago from the Senators?
Yeah, I don't think you can fault their effort. Craig Anderson, like you said, had a great game, kept the team in it the whole time. They got a pretty antsy Chicago team who's coming off a pair of divisional losses earlier in the week to Nashville and St. Louis, so you knew they were going to bring their A game even if they were on a back-to-back. Again, like lots of penalties, but again, I wouldn't say the power play for Chicago is what won them the game, so I wouldn't put too much stock into that, and I don't see the Sens taking over 6 to 7 minors per game going forward. But I do think you would have liked to have seen them at least get 1 point out of that. Only getting 1 point out of 4 over the weekend is definitely not, I don't think, what the Sens had in mind.
Yeah, I won't be too disappointed that they didn't walk away from Chicago with anything. I like that they got the point against New Jersey, if nothing else. But I had pegged this as a loss for the Sens. Short travel day, going into that building, playing against that team, you're going to have to be on top of things. And then actually they looked really good in the first period, but as the game wore on, Chicago just leaned on them more and more. And towards the end, I think they really were the better team, and the shot advantage, I think, illustrated that very well. So just to wrap up here on Sens Leafs, Senators Tuesday night will be in Columbus. Leafs will be hosting the Buffalo Sabres. I know we'll be chatting about the Sabres just a little bit in a touch. But do you see a win there for Ottawa or a win there for the Leafs? How do those games go for you, Steve?
I think you can see them both pull out some wins. Again, both of them coming off some tough losses where maybe not necessarily their best performances. So I think you'll see them come out with some rejuvenated effort and be able to put up some wins on Tuesday.
Yeah, I like Ottawa against Columbus. They'll be a little more rested up. Hopefully that has an effect. I don't think Columbus is out of their league. I think that's a team that is beatable by the Senators, so look for a good effort there. At least the 1 point would be nice, if not 2. As for the Leafs, I think they get a nice juicy matchup with those Sabres. It is at home, which may or may not be a disadvantage at this point, but if you can't beat the Sabres on home ice, I don't know who else you are going to plan to beat, so we will expect a Leafs win as well on Tuesday. And with that, that'll bring us nicely to the segment of the show today. We're going to be asking, are they for real? Looking at a handful of teams here. In the case of the Predators and Capitals, are they for real in the good sense? Are these two teams legitimately going to compete this season? Off to good starts in both their regards. And as for the Sabres and Hurricanes, are they for real in the sense, are they actually that bad? So, Steve, why don't you take us off? Start us with the Nashville Predators there. Off to a pretty good start to their season. 5-1-2 right now. Your thoughts on the Predators?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been a pretty productive start for them. I don't think too many people saw them coming out of the gate like this. I don't think it's that surprising as many people see it to be. They've got arguably one of the top 5 goaltenders in the league in Pekka Rinne, who, after an injury-filled last season, I think he missed 55 games. So for a team like Nashville, that's a big loss for them. To have him back this year and the way he's playing lights out, he is the man on that team. And even in front of him, you've got one of the best all-around D-corps in the entire league, Shea Weber, Norris perennial candidate every year, Roman Josi, up-and-coming star, and then you've got Seth Jones as well, Ryan Ellis, Matisse Ekholm, and an old Senator, Anton Volchenkov, who, while not the fleetest of foot, somehow has a magnet inside of him that he's still able to block every single shot that's anywhere close to him. And even with their offense, the James Neal acquisition's proving to be okay so far, a little bit of chemistry with Ribeiro, and while their division is very tough with teams like Chicago, St. Louis, and Dallas, I do see them being able to maybe not sustain the pace they're on right now, but I think we will see them be a playoff team when all things are said and done at the end of the year.
Yeah, some excellent points there, and I'll probably touch on a couple of those. First, a nod to Volchenkov. The guy is a tank. I love him back here in Ottawa. Sad to see him gone. He does make a difference on the ice, so good to see him having some success with Nashville. But yeah, I think I agree with you. This team could make some noise. Pekka Rinne, no doubt their defense is locked down. Probably one of the best blue line back setups in the league. I don't think many teams can compete with them. Defense, top 6, and goaltender back. Offense might leave a little bit to be desired, but Neal seems working out. Ribeiro has got something to prove still, so perhaps their offense, which has sort of been the Achilles heel in the past seasons, might continue to support the team. I think their biggest challenge, and you touched on it as well, though, is the division. Minnesota, probably a team you left out there, St. Louis, even Colorado, if they get things figured out. There's a lot of depth in that division right now. It's actually crazy when you look at the rundown to think that so much good hockey is being played in one division. But the simple fact is that it is being played all in the one division, and at least 1, 2, maybe even 3 of those teams are going to find the short end of the stick when it comes up. So for me, that's a bit of a coin toss going down the stretch. Who knows how that's all going to play out? But if the Predators can keep it up, I mean, they can certainly come out on top. I don't think that'll shock anybody. Flipping over to the Eastern Conference, we'll chat in the same light here about the Washington Capitals. They're 4-2-2 right now. I don't know if I'm convinced. Steve, you want to take the lead here?
Yeah, I think I'm also pleasantly surprised with the Capitals. I think a lot of people expected a really down year from them. A new coach coming in with a different sort of very defensive system that maybe the Caps aren't very accustomed to. Not really sure what they had with Holtby and some questionable, to some at least, signings in the offseason. But they've come out great. Ovechkin and Backstrom are still one of the best duos, if not the best duo in the NHL. Orpik and Niskanen are holding up so far with their large paychecks, and Holtby's been great. And they've gotten some pleasant contributions from Andrei Burakovsky, who, instead of, it looks like Evgeny Kuznetsov is going to be the hotshot young phenom forward going forward for the Capitals.
And sure, there is a little bit to like there, but while you're pleasantly surprised with the Capitals, I am decidedly pessimistic. I don't think they've got enough in net to keep this running through. Offensively, too many liabilities, I think, up there. Ovechkin, he's been in the league for a while now, and while he had some early success in his career, we really just haven't seen it sustained consistently. Last season was particularly glaring at times, so I don't know if the Washington front group is enough to make up for what I feel will be, over the course of the year, some pretty big deficiencies in net and as well on their blue line. That's just my opinion on it. added to that, 4-2-2. We're still early in the year here. We just talked about both the Ottawa Senators and Toronto Maple Leafs looking like 500 teams with records that are very comparable to that. So I don't think I'm going to give the Capitals a nod when I scaled back on both the Leafs and Senators. Three teams that kind of all seem, give or take, similar to me. A few issues to go around. So I'm not taking the Capitals, but I will back the Preds. On to the Sabres and Hurricanes and the flip side of this question, and are they this terrible? Are they that bad? Buffalo Sabres, take it away, Steve.
Yeah, I think they're probably the worst team we've seen since the big lockout in 2004, 2005, even competing with some of those Atlanta Thrasher teams, which were unbelievably bad. They've won against San Jose, and they've got a 7-game winning streak against the Sharks, which I'm sure the Sharks would love to explain how that is, but just watching the team, they struggle for offense. I think Corey Perry and Rick Nash have the same amount of goals as the entire Sabres team so far to start the year. Their defense, they're just running around. Tyler Myers, just a shadow of his Calder self, and he's apparently on the market. The goalies haven't been too bad in Enroth and Newvirth, but just there's just too many shots, too many chances on them where they can't keep up with it. But all that being said, I think the Sabres, if there ever was a year to try and get the best chance to get the first overall pick, this is one of those years, and the Sabres are definitely laying a claim to showing that they are the be-all and end-all when it comes to the lottery.
Yeah, you bring me back to some memories there with the Atlanta Thrashers when the high point in a decade of hockey is a 0-4 sweep in the playoffs first round. Not good news, and not good news to be being compared to that, if that truly is where the Sabres are in your opinion. I won't argue very much with you there. I don't think they're far off from that. You make a good point. It is a good year to be a bad team, though. Certainly top prospect in Connor McDavid available to the true loser. The Buffalo Sabres will be putting in a good claim for that for sure. They're rolling with a -18 goal differential already, just a handful of games in the season. If that pace continues or anywhere near that, it's going to be a long year. It'll be a lot of goals in the back of the Sabres net and a very good chance at Connor McDavid. So I'm with you with the Sabres. As for the Hurricanes, do you see anything different there, or any positive light at the end of the tunnel, or is this the same story in a different uniform?
I think it's, like you just said, same story in a different uniform, although a few more variables at play. Hurricanes been hit by a lot of injuries, both Stahl's out. Eric's supposed to be back very soon, and Skinner just came back after a bit of an injury, but they've just not looked good at all. They've struggled again defensively, especially Cam Ward and Hudobin just not being able to stop the puck. And unlike the Sabres, it looks like they're big guys. They've got them locked in long term. Not too sure what the future is going forward, if they're going to keep this team together and what they plan with it. You got to hope for them that if they can't get Connor McDavid, maybe they can get Jack Eichel, get that number 2 pick, at least get some transcending superstar maybe, because it really looks like Carolina's going to need to start all over again.
Yeah, Carolina, I think, has been doing this sort of patchwork project for a few years now. I think this team looks distinctly like one that needs a full rebuild. They just need to say, we're going to stop it here, take a couple seasons. Cam Ward, I think, still has some trade value out there. His name gets mentioned every now and then. Maybe move him, bring in a couple picks, find out a way to jumpstart this rebuild a little bit. I think if anybody in Carolina has any aspirations of playoffs or otherwise, they're just fooling themselves. The goal differential, not that dissimilar to the Buffalo Sabres at -15 already on the year. They still don't have a win, although they have played 2 less games than the Sabres. But again, still no win. Not a lot of depth on the team, not a strong blue line. I don't think they have a terribly strong tandem in net right now, so I just don't see a lot of positive for the Hurricanes. And I think they're also in the running for that Connor McDavid sweepstakes. So that's the end of the Are For Real segment. We'll wrap it up there, and we'll swing over to the NFL here. Another busy weekend in the National Football League. This Week 8 featuring one of the highlights being the game in London, England. We'll start there. How about early games, Steve? This one bright and early, 9:30 a.m., Detroit Lions, Atlanta Falcons, Wembley Stadium. Does this do it for you, or is this just too gimmicky to work?
I don't find it too gimmicky, in my opinion. I actually enjoy, I think, having a very early game. Maybe not having it every week, but every now and then you have one standalone game, sort of like the opposite of the night game where you've got 9:30 in the morning. I think you might actually see some more sports doing this as well. I think the NBA's talked about having some early morning games so their fans in China can have it in prime time for them. So you never know. Maybe baseball can do it with the Dominican Republic or something along those lines. But I think it's a cool initiative. Gives a chance to spotlight a couple teams there. And for me, I'm okay with waking up and having a game on right away at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah, and I think in that sense we come from the same view. I didn't actually wake up for the game. I should point out here, but the fact that it was in existence and I could have was nice. I have no problem with that. I don't think I want to see it every week. I don't know if I necessarily want to see it more than a couple times a year, but it is kind of neat to have it as a one-off here and there. I still like to get up Sunday morning, have my pregame show, then get into the games. I like that little ritual I've established for a good decade plus here now. That's how I like to start my Sunday, but I won't really complain about an extra game. And as well, kind of separating it out of the chunk of games, it does allow you to focus on it a little bit more, which might be the one drawback of the NFL schedule is when everything's going, it's kind of hard to really zone in on more than one or two things at a time and really get the full enjoyment of it. So it is kind of a neat idea, but I don't know if we need to expand much more than we already have it at, in my opinion here. But moving on from that game over there, which of course we actually probably shouldn't fail to mention, of course, a dramatic finish to that game. Detroit, if Buffalo's found a way at times to pull out these wins that they probably shouldn't have any business doing, Detroit might be right there with them. Of course, the kick went wide to win the game. Delayed game called on the line, so they get to retake it from 5 yards back. And Prater's good on his second attempt. Maybe banishing some of those kicking woes they've had in Detroit. Was that just a given as soon as you saw that call that the script couldn't be changed? It had to go Detroit for the win?
I think you had to figure... I think most people in Detroit were probably thinking after he misses a 43-yarder, Prater's definitely going to miss the 48-yarder now. But it worked out in the best for them. And if you're the Falcons, I mean, you can't hate the player. You got to hate the game. You can't decline the penalty. It's forced into effect. So you got to let them get another chance. And while it was a close call, it looked like the play clock had ran out. You wonder how the Lions even allowed that to happen. But it happened, and fortunately for them, it worked out in their favor.
Yeah, and that's a conversation for another day. We don't have time for them today, but if the Lions can't get a game-winning field goal kick pulled off on time, are we really that threatened by them? I don't know. Maybe just a moment of mismanagement, but something to think about anyway. Team we would like to talk about today, though, the Arizona Cardinals, moving to 6-1 on the season with a nice win there last night against the Eagles by 4 points. Not a game that was spotless on their behalf, but they are finding a way to win. They do play in a tough division, and they are in certainly strong control of it. 49ers in second place right now at 4-3, so 2 games behind. Not to mention that the Cardinals own the tiebreak on the Giants with the one win they have over them at this point. Thoughts on the Cardinals here, Steve?
Yeah, I think they had a good season last year, just in a really tough division. They couldn't make it out into the playoffs, but this year you're seeing them pick off right where they left off. Their defense is one of the best in the league, even without Patrick Peterson for a lot of the time this year. And Carlson Palmer is proving adequate, and they're showing that right now they are the best team in that very good division with San Francisco, Seattle, and even St. Louis to a lesser degree.
And I think Carson Palmer is the ace up their sleeve there. I mean, they've got a 6-1 record rolling, and he's only played a few games for them. He's already made a noticeable impact, helping the offense stabilize, just sustaining drives. Larry Fitzgerald's looking like a young man again on his grab, sprinting off to the end zone there. I don't know if I've seen that speed from him in a while, but I'm sure he's feeling rejuvenated with Carson back in the lineup. The defense holding tough. Injuries have been their challenge this year, but they are battling through. I think they're showing the depth they have on that roster. Not even sure if Peterson has an impact anymore. He played pretty shaky football, including yesterday before leaving with a concussion, getting run around the field by Jeremy Maclin there. Not that the Eagles are a pushover by any stretch, but maybe almost a blessing in disguise to have Peterson out there. So we will see where the Cardinals end up here, but looking good at 6-1 moving forward in the weeks to come. Another team that we'll chat about here, the Houston Texans. A little cloudier picture than maybe the Cardinals with only a 4-4 record to boast right now. Still, though, they come off a win last night against Tennessee, 30-16. Arian Foster has a good game. Ryan Fitzpatrick playing some serviceable football, keeping them in their games. The Houston Texans. What's your thoughts on their franchise right now?
Yeah, I think you've got to be, at least from the defensive viewpoint, you got to be really excited with going forward. You already have J.J. Watt, who is, I think, bar none, the best defensive player in the league, doing everything, sacking, interceptions, forced fumbles, and you name it, he's doing it. They're only one game out of the division lead. They just got Clowney back as well on the defense, so they're only going to be even better. They're going to be getting more sacks, more pressure on the quarterbacks. And I think from the offensive standpoint, I don't think many people were expecting Arian Foster to have such a bounce-back year, especially in such a one-dimensional offense with Fitzpatrick as quarterback, but he's really just proven to be back to his old self, being able to break down long runs, get to the secondary, and just get lots of touchdowns and be back to his fantasy dominating self like he was a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm actually rather shocked that Foster has been able to make that recovery, especially after the offseason, thoughts of retirement and so forth. So good on him for having a good season. To the point of the Texans defense, they are one of the lights out units in the league. Watt bringing up some memories of Ray Lewis, Brian Urlacher. Those guys won championships with solid defenses built around them. And maybe the Texans have a little bit of a look like that to them. You can win a Super Bowl with a team built that way. There's no doubt about it. Watt is a game changer in every way, shape, and form of that phrase. My question becomes somewhat the depth of the AFC, and this has been a kind of a running theme. We've looked at a few of the teams that are sort of on the bubble, and kind of your Cleveland Browns, your Buffalo Bills. I think your Texans fall into this lineup here. When you look at things, they've got 4 of their wins are against some pretty soft opponents, Washington Redskins, Raiders, Bills, Tennessee, Titans, so certainly winnable games there, whereas they've lost to the Giants, Cowboys, Colts, and Steelers. So it seems like when their opponent's a little stiffer, they are finding ways to lose. But then when you start to look at the conference, again, the Bills, Dolphins, Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, Chargers, they're all ahead of them by a game or have a game in hand or are more favorable one way or another. And with the division probably going to be locked up by the Colts, I'm not jumping off that bandwagon. I think that team is too strong. You're asking the Texans to find a way in through the wild card, and I'm not sold there just yet. I'd like to see another couple wins before I throw my hat on their playoff bid. So that's where I stand. And to wrap up the NFL weekend here, we will have to give some love to the hometown Bills. Another big win, potentially the most boring 43 points I've ever seen scored in a football game. The third quarter particularly was a snooze fest, just punting the ball back and forth for an entire quarter. The Jets pinned deep. The Bills defense looks dominant, looks for real. Would have liked to have seen a little more of the offense during that stretch, but they were playing with the lead, so no complaints there. How'd you like that Bills win against the Jets?
I told you a bit back that you might want to temper that enthusiasm, and I'm going to stay with that claim.
Steve, the Bills, come on.
They are 5-3. It is maybe cause for celebration to some long-term Bills fans, so I see where you're coming from, but I think this game was more of the Jets just not being a very good team, more so than Buffalo being a dominant team on both sides of the ball. Geno Smith, probably the worst start you could possibly have as a quarterback. The Bills +4 in the turnover differential at the half and only up 7. I think you got to be a bit concerned there that you'd want the offense to get a little bit more productive when you've got those types of opportunities. That being said, though, on the other side, I do think that you don't have to temper your enthusiasm for Sammy Watkins. Definitely proving to be a stud and proving worthy of that high draft pick. I think with Calvin Benjamin, it's between those two for Offensive Rookie of the Year right now. And even with his premature celebrations, he's really just something else for that Bills offense.
Yeah, he'll have to mature a touch. Certainly he'll learn his lesson about celebrating 10 or 15 yards out. I guess the positive to that is that he found a way to get behind that defense, and he's been doing it consistently. We talk about him quite a bit on this show, and generally always the positive. So I think we can let that gaffe slide there. The other half of that story, though, to me, is that Orton's looking pretty legit here. It's been 4 weeks of good football from him. They had the tough loss against New England, but since E.J. Manuel's been pulled, which seems ages ago for this Buffalo Bills team, it's been all Orton since then. He's played very consistently, hasn't had that bad game that's really cost them. So I like what he's bringing to the table, and I like them going forward. I don't think we're going to temper the enthusiasm on my side of things. Maybe 5-3 doesn't get you to the playoffs, but it certainly gets you in the conversation. You know, they've got a chance here going down the back half of the season. They'll certainly have a chance to stay competitive. Again, and going back to what we just talked about with the Texans, there's going to be a lot of competition for that wild card. So I'm not going to say it's 100% lock that they find a way to beat out those other teams, but I think they are part of the conversation. And with the defense playing the way it is, that can get you to a playoffs, and who knows, maybe even beyond. So let's stick with the Bills. Go Bills. We'll hope they keep it going. And Steve, I think that brings us to the end of the episode for this week. Any closing comments from you going forward?
Just looking forward. You get to see LeBron in his first real action as a Cavalier coming up this week. Looking forward to that. The return part, insert whatever number return it is now for him between Miami and Cleveland. But that should be exciting. The Raptors getting underway as well. It should be good. And the conclusion of the World Series in the next coming days. So got a lot of big things coming up.
Yeah, I think it's split between the World Series for me and if Toronto finds a loss against Buffalo, I'd like to see the heat turned up on Randy Carlyle a bit. So a little cynicism for me to end the show. There we go. All right, so we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another edition of the SOS podcast. Join us next week for more chat on Southern Ontario sports and beyond. Take care, everyone.